Hey guys, this is Mike.
And Joe.
From Deep Wood, Force of Will.
Back for the third time!
Third time in a row! Beer, 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 beer.
Don't call it a three-peat.
It's not. We had to skip a day.
Well, hey, you never know. We could go to a four-peat.
True. Anyway, this is the last episode of our set review for the Winds of the Ominous Moon. We've already covered light, fire, water, and wind. Now what's left is darkness and
Whatever else is left in the set numbers.
Yep, exactly. Kind of like the numerical order type thing. But anyway, we're not going to really, take too much time because the last one was way too long.
Yep. And
again,
also the shortest one.
Yeah, exactly. You guys already know the stars from the last couple of videos. If you do not know our star ratings, please go back to the first videos and check it out.
Yep, that's where we go over it in a little bit more detail.
Yep, so just know 5 is best, 1 is worst.
Yep, without further ado, Bird of Demise.
Yeah, so Bird of Demise is a 2 Darkness Will, 600/600 with Quick Cast. It's a Dinosaur Resonator, and null when your hand is empty. When this card is put into a graveyard from the field, your opponent loses 600 life unless they banish a Resonator.
This is a really weird card.
Yeah, I don't really understand the thought process on this thing.
Like, even if it was like... I actually think this card would have been really cool if it didn't have the null tag on it. But it might have been actually too powerful.
Either if it didn't have the null tag, or if it did have the null tag, your opponent loses 600 life and banishes a Resonator. Probably would have made this thing playable.
Maybe. The null mechanic's just really hard to incorporate unless you're using Regalia. And in which case, I don't know why you aren't just hitting them in the face with Scarlet in the first place, but it's difficult to judge cards because, unfortunately, Heavenly Fruit is not a self-contained engine.
Nope, definitely not. And especially with Severing Winds in the game currently, absolutely forget about that.
Yep, so unfortunately we're going to have to rate Bird of Demise a 1-star card. Maybe after Severing Winds rotate we might see some miracles happen, but for now, 1 star.
Yep. Moving on to the next, we have Blackleaf, which is a 1 will, 1 darkness will, 100/100 elemental. You can banish it to give a target J Resonator -400/-400 until end of turn, or you can discard it, pay 1 of any color, and target J Resonator gains -200/-200 until end of turn.
This card isn't exactly terrible. The -4/-4 is actually kind of decent on a 1/1. If only it could have been like Kama, but the inheritance is almost garbage. You're never going to get really any good value out of that.
Yep, it's just hard to see a situation where this thing is going to be doing a lot of work in any kind of elemental-based deck, just because the stats are really, really weak. If you're trying to set it up so that it kills something off for really good value, it might just die before then. So
yeah, and if you compare this to, one of the premier 1-drops like Tama, this card is atrocious.
Yep.
So
no self-contained engine, just kind of a natural neg 1. So unfortunately, we have to only give this thing a 1 star. It is searchable with Leaf Paladin though, so that's a bonus, I guess.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing to draw with Leaf Paladin if that -2/-2 winds up mattering, but most of the time it won't.
Yep.
Next up is Bloody Wings. Bloodied Winds.
Bloodied Wings. Weird.
Yeah. It's a 3-will chant Mystery. Mystery matters. Resonators gain -6/-6 until end of turn. This card is awakened. Resonators your opponent control gain -6/-6 until end of turn instead. The awakening requires removing a mystery counter, as you might expect from Rhea.
Yep, so this card is pretty interesting. Just stock on its own, even if you're not playing Rhea, it's a -6/-6 to the board. That's not too bad for 3-will. We've seen stuff like Flame King Shout in the past, where it just deals 400 to a board and then you put something in, but it's normally one-sided. This being one-sided if you awaken it means that it's pretty much extra value on top of that kind of Flame King Shout style effect, just pretty much exclusively for like Rhea and anything that generates mystery counters in general.
Exactly. For now, we don't think this card is actually that good, because unfortunately Black has the best AoE card in the game, which is the Final Battle, and that card completely trounces this card. But after rotation, Bloodied Winds is definitely the way to go with Rhea, and is actually a very good option for Rhea, and also in Sealed, that's your best option for Rhea.
Yep, exactly. So 3 stars, sort of a preemptive 3 stars, just because of the way that we think it'll interact with Final Battle currently, but still, just in the vacuum, the card's very strong for that regard.
Yep, definitely something to look out for.
Yep. Next up on the list is Dark Bokuro, who was kind of a subject of debate between the two of us. I had a couple of doubts about it, and Joe was thinking that it was really going to spark something. It's a 2-will 0-1000, so the stats are interesting. It's a Fairy Tale Resonator, and your opponent pays 1 more to play Chance during your turn.
I'm a little bit on the fence about this card still after seeing some of the bans. And getting rid of True Blade is a pretty good bonus to this, because that was, even though that's a terrible way to try and remove this card, but that was one of the best cards to like hurt with this card. But the reasoning behind Dark Bokuro being okay, it's a 2-drop that has basically the same effect as Sha Wu Jing, and Sha Wu Jing was seeing play before the set came out in either IU or sometimes in the side decks of Charizard, so it's worth keeping in mind.
Yep, the only problem I had with this card was that the stats compared to Sha Wu Jing's stats, and the fact that Sha Wu Jing was very aggressively statted, was the reason I thought it was just kind of better in general. But at the same time, 1 cost less means that you're shutting your opponent out of their chance 1 turn earlier, which could end up mattering depending on the deck you're facing.
Yep, they're both decent options. For a black, if you're black and not planning on running green, I think this is definitely the better option.
Yep, but if you're not planning on running green, are you even playing Force of Will?
Well, hopefully we're going to point away from that, but
yeah.
For now, you should keep Dark Bokuro on your mind. You could see people side into it. That's why we have it in the 3-star category. That's kind of the tech slot, so I would worry about it more in side decks than main deck, unless they're playing like a Death and Taxes-esque deck.
Yeah, this card's actually really good for Death and Taxes style builds, just because that 2 cost is just so much better for that early shutdown compared to the Sha Wu Jing.
Exactly.
So, Dark Bokuro is a really cool card, and definitely going to be a source of debate of a lot of players. Also, something we didn't mention was that Fairy Tale Resonator race was a pretty solid deal, depending on the format you're playing in, of course.
Oh yeah, and Wanderer, this might get played in Grim decks as a side option, just because you can search it out and play it, and it's a good way to shut down some amount of chance in Wanderer.
Yep, exactly. So 3 stars, definitely good. Definitely a quality card.
Yep. Next up is not a quality card, which is Demon in the Moonlight. It's a 2-will 6/6 Resonator Demon. You can use Time Will to give it precision, or Time Will to give it Death Touch to J Resonators.
Yeah. The fact that it's 2 J Resonators is kind of cool, I guess. We don't see many of those, but the last time we saw that did have that was Creature from Chaos, which automatically came stock with it, and was a 1-drop with 200 attack, so it didn't matter as much.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to see I mean, it's a 2-will 6/6, which, you know, you premium stats for that will cost. The Death Touch is okay, like you can make people fear stuff, but a lot of like the big J Resonators are either going to fly over you, or they don't mind too much if they die.
Exactly, because a lot of them are just enter effects, and when they enter, they get the value out of it, and then if you kill them, it's just like, oh, alright, you crashed your 2-drop into my thing that already got me value.
Yeah, and this card doesn't inherently +1 in any way, so it's just meh all around. There's nothing stand-outy about it. Probably a good card in draft, though.
Yeah, definitely good in draft. So, 1 star for constructed, of course.
Exactly.
Moving on, we have Essence of the Void, or as we like to call it, Big Urush Mataro.
Yes.
It's a 3-drop 8/8 Resonator Cthulhu support. Very minimal Cthulhu support, but it's there.
Yep.
When this card enters the field, you destroy target damaged Resonator.
Yeah, basically, as we said, it's Urushi Mataro on a 3-drop.
Yep, the stats obviously are good for a 3-drop. They're just, you know, stock, quote-unquote, good stats. The 1600 total stats is always a nice little pressure point there. The only issue is that if you're playing a deck that's wanting to use Rush Mataro, normally it's going to be Mikage. Mikage can ping something for 1, and then on turn 2, after untapping everything, you play the Rush Mataro on curve, destroy something, and just go with it. Essence of the Void comes a little bit later. You're probably more susceptible to getting it cancelled or getting the ability cancelled by Lorite. So, unfortunately, it's just a little too expensive for what you're trying to do with it. The stats really don't matter much.
And also, now that we have a bunch of Stoning to Death-esque cards that came out between when Mikage and your Kintaro were released and this card, having this type of effect is pretty bad for a 3-cost card. Destroying stuff for 3 will after you already have to like dump will into dealing that initial damage is kind of bad.
Yep. Kintaro sees very negligible play, especially because Mikage isn't in the greatest spot right now.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we don't really see this card working in the current format. If there's a way to consistently deal damage coming up and 3-drops that destroy things see value, I don't imagine what kind of word that would be, but...
we have to play an odd deck. There we go.
There we go. Exactly.
Let's not go to the Hearthstone path.
Yep.
Anyway,
Definitely
next card.
1 star.
1 star. Next card is Every Last Ounce of Strength. 3 black, draw 3 cards, you lose 600 life. You immediately compare this card to Ray's other draw card.
Yep. Blood Spray, which was basically the same thing for 2. You draw 2 cards. I think you still take...
You lose 300.
300, yeah. But you also get an Awakening with Blood Spray, which was actually a really big upside, where you just destroy a Resonator with total cost 2 or less, I believe it was?
Yes.
Yes, that was it. It'd be nice if I read cards before talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
But Every Last Ounce of Strength is pretty much just a bigger version of that without the extra upside. While that might sound kind of bad, drawing 3 for 3 and losing 600 life isn't the worst thing in the world for, like, if you're trying to do either a combo or like a late game combo or a control style deck where you're trying to dig for answers. This card can potentially see a decent amount of work.
Yeah, this card is a +2 on its own, so you do have to keep that in mind, and it's a 3-will card, so there's not many cards in the game that are actually a +2 for 3 outside of, like, I don't know, Rachel, but we'll talk about Rachel. Yeah, so the other thing that I would compare this card to, which it more aggressively compares to because it's a more expensive card, is Valentina's Reach, which is a fantastic control card. This card would probably see more play than Valentina's Reach because most times you'd probably be drawing about 3 cards with Reach, and that's about a 5 will, and that's pretty expensive. And Reach is a decent card, all things considered.
Yep, exactly. Another really good thing to think about with Every Last Ounce of Strength is that because it's a life loss, you just the Malefic Tree can play this pretty much with no repercussions.
Oh, yes. Almost completely forgot about Yig.
Yeah, being able to dig for answers in Yig is really, really strong. Like, you pull away from both of your life totals with this card, but at the same time, you're digging for your answers. You're going to find something that's going to make Yggdrasil do some serious work in the late game. So, it definitely has some fringe options, but Every Last Ounce of Strength does have its applications in the correct decks and in the correct situations, so definitely a 2-star card with that in mind.
It's a little bit... If you lean a little bit towards one way or the other, it gets outclassed, but at its specific spot, it does have a niche, so that's why we give it a 2 stars.
Yep, absolutely.
Next up is a doozy of a card.
Yep, Glint of Insight is a 1-will chant mystery. You name a card, your opponent reveals their hand and discards all cards that share a name with that named card. And then if you remove 2 mystery counters from your J-Ruler, this card in your graveyard gains Remnant until end of turn.
That is fantastic. If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you call this card Mind Crush.
Yep.
I think
if
there's
you're
a
not,
magic
you
version
play...
of it.
Oh, what was the name of it? I don't remember. There's something that almost exactly compares to this in Magic.
Yeah.
Can't for the life of me remember the name though. Somebody in the comments is gonna say
I think it
which
also
one.
has like some type of Remnant-esque ability.
It's kind of like an extra thing to it. Something like that. Banishing
But
something.
anyway, let's talk about the actual card that's right in front of us. Glint is absolutely insane. There is going to be situations where you are going to get blown out by Glint because your hand has more than 1 card in it, and you just get like basically Lapis's Darkstorm for all your answers for 1 will. And that's terrifying.
Yep. A lot of people have been saying that in New Frontiers, the first thing you're ever going to call is Severing Winds, just so you can get value out of the Remnant. And that's actually not the worst strategy in the world. A lot of decks are playing about 4 Severing Winds, 3 to 4. If you hit any out of your opponent's hand, that's immediate value for you.
Yep, and guess what? If you miss, who cares? They don't have Severing Winds. You're
And then you can just
in
do it
a
again.
good situation. And you got to look at their hand. The biggest downside with this card is that you do have to be able to know hand information. Otherwise, calling something is kind of weak.
Yeah, you just call something out in the dark. But because we still do have not only Scorn of Dark Alice, Thought Control, the Nameless Mist, we also still have, out of all things, Ahriman, the blue Ahriman, that occasionally sees play in IU.
Yep.
Both of those, that actually combos really well with Glint. It turns it into a really powerful option, so control blue-black Ray could be a thing. Who knows? But
you probably don't even need the blue in Rhea because you also have Blazer.
Yeah, there's Blazer too.
A huge amount of discard options in black, and ways to see hand is limitless. Especially with ways that are just 1-for-1s. You don't even have to play Ahriman. IU plays Ahriman just because they want a way to look at
because they have a slot
hand.
for it, right?
It's also important that it's a mystery because mysteries are going to be searchable later in our set review. So keep that in mind as a good thing. Is there anything bad about this card? There's a reason why we gave it 5 stars.
Yeah, it's really hard to come up with downsides. I guess the fact that if you're drawing this on if this is your only turn 1 play and you don't draw any of your other discard cards, you're kind of inclined to play it and see if you can call something right. It can be a shot in the dark in the early game, but at the same time, you're not using it in the early game for that.
There's probably going to be someone that's going to figure out how to get the math right on what to call when.
Right,
depending on how many cards you keep.
Yeah, Glint is definitely something that's going to be terrifying in a good player's hands.
Yep, it's one of those high skill cap cards, or just still a strong card, even if you just play it to your options. 5 stars.
Yep, absolutely, without a doubt. Moving on, we have Kintaro, who is a 2-will 6/6 Fairy Tale Resonator, who automatically comes stock with Precision, which is already fantastic. Better than Demon in the Moonlight. When it enters the field, you put a +100/+100 counter on it for each Fairy Tale and non-Fairy Tale beast you control.
It's really odd, but in a vacuum, this card, like played on turn 2, is a 2-will 7/7 with Precision, and that's actually pretty sick.
Yeah, exactly, because it counts itself on something, which is unreal.
Yep, and that's basically where I was looking at it. If you try to push for like an aggro style black, I think this is one of the cards you go for. They do have one of the best 2-drops in the game, which is Jeanne d'Arc, the black one.
Yep.
And that requires a pretty wide board, so a Zooey black deck could come about now that they have a second 2-drop that's pretty above average on the power curve.
Yep, exactly. And if you find a way to put any other Fairy Tale Resonators, anything like low-costed or even like 2-drops that can stick on the board, Kintaro's value just keeps going up and up. Also, beasts. We have to think about beasts in this game.
Yeah, there's also going to be, Fairy Tale / Beast, which is going to be our next card, but we'll get to that eventually.
Yep, so Kintaro has really cool applications. We don't see him currently fitting into any one specific deck besides something Zooey, but we have no idea how that'll be in the coming format. So I think the 2-star rating is probably a safe spot for him for now.
I think he's going to grow in power as the sets release and we move into, X1?
Yep.
So I'd say be on the lookout for Kintaro. If Black gets some other good early game resonators, this card might get a lot better. But for now, it's on the mediocre side, but it's still above average. So
it's high mediocre.
Yeah.
So 2 stars.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to the next, we have Kintaro's partner, who, of course, goes along with Kintaro.
Yep, he works with Kintaro, and he is a 1-will 4/3 Fairy Tale Beast. When this card enters the field, target J Resonator gains -2/-2 until end of turn. This card just straight up puts Blackleaf to shame.
Yeah, exactly. Blackleaf just has nothing on what this thing can do on turn 1. Only downside with Kintaro's partner, just immediately looking at it, is that if it's the only thing on board, it has to deal the -2/-2 to itself, which could leave it a little more susceptible to removal. Something like, not Tama, because Tama would be targetable by it.
Yep. So there's very little things that actually matters, but
Mikage, I guess.
yeah, Mikage. The other option would be like, I don't know, Alice's World of Madness. That's on board.
Yeah, but again, very few things. Just stock on its own, 4-3 for 1 is decently statted. It's kind of similar to Hellpig. But coming with the Fairy Tale and Beast tags, well, the Fairy Tale to add onto it is really nice. And the ability to clear stuff like Tama, maybe like a Monkey Trapped in Life if you're playing a matchup with that. I'm just trying to think of just small resonators people like to put out on turn 1.
Oh, I just realized something about Kintaro. I just went back to it and I realized that it says Fairy Tale and non-Fairy Tale Beast you control, so that's the same wording as a Yowain. So if you have a ruler that is a Fairy Tale or a non-Fairy Tale Beast, you will get a buff from that too, so that makes it even better.
That's really interesting, actually. That's actually super neato. Guess we're gonna have to experiment with Little Red and Wanderer.
Exactly. Anyway, back to Kintara's Beast. The enter ability on it is at times gonna give you that little bit of extra reach and be the instant +1 that you want to get off of your 1-drops. So in that regard, it's an above average 1-drop. You don't want to play 1-drops that just die.
Yep.
With no value and be 1 for 1 or something. That's not a good way to play when you have cards like Tama in the game.
Yep, exactly. So with all that being said, Kintaro's partner is just pretty strong with that regard, so we say 2 stars for it.
I also love the art on it. Very werewolfy and
Gladiator bear.
yeah. Next up is a terrible card, Night of the Black Moon.
Yep, 4-will 1000/1000 Were-Rabbit. When it enters the field, each player discards a card.
Yep, it's the opposite of Were-Rabbit of the Half Moon. I don't even know the name of the Null Moon. I don't care about that card either. But
yep. Basically, this is literally just a worse version of Black Thieves. What was the name of it? Black Star Thieves. Are you
talking about the Black Panda?
No, I'm talking about the 2-will 6/6 that has this exact same effect.
Oh, either way, it's still terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Playing a 4-will 1000/1000 that has no good effects is terrible, and then playing something a 4-will 1000/1000 that makes you discard a card from your hand is even worse. But I guess if you want null mechanics, you'll be like, okay, cool, I'm discarding cards, but like,
why not make null happen 2 turns earlier? 1 star.
Yeah. 1 star. Definitely a draft card.
Yep. Next up, we have Life or Death Struggle, which you guys will immediately say, hey, isn't this just big Soul Hunt?
Yeah, and it is. It's 2-will chant. Each player discards a card, then each player banishes the resonator with the highest cost among resonators they control. First of all, this art is fantastic. I love it.
This is the coolest art, yeah.
Second of all, so the biggest problem with Soul Hunt is that you could never really control what your opponent banishes, especially with a card like Laureate in the game. They wind up just playing Laureate into this, and then they sack the Laureate with a Soul Hunt. So that made Soul Hunt pretty bad. Just quick cast resonators in general can make it pretty bad. But Life or Death Struggle doesn't care about that. If you have a big thing on board, you are forced to banish it.
Yep. And also a cool thing about this card is that each player discards a card and then they banish the resonator. So you can actually choose you won't choose the resonator, but you'll see what your opponent discards before you go into the banishing step there.
Unfortunately, it's all one card effect because so my dream of discarding something that then replays itself will never work. Sadness.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You have to wait for the whole thing to resolve.
Yeah. There's not much else to really say about this card. Soul Hunt would be pretty good in this meta, I think. But we don't have it. So I do think Life or Death Struggle could see a slot, especially with Ruined Story gone. It is non-targeting removal.
Probably sees a lot of play in just very heavy Darkness control decks. We're not sure if we're going to see a lot of like really, really heavy control, just because we think that there's going to be a lot of aggressive stuff coming out of this next
and
format.
Also, I'm not sure if this is the card you want. I think you would prefer to Soul Hunt because, at least the way I'm envisioning black control, which would be Rhea, you're gonna put a big thing on board, and you do not want to banish that thing because it's gonna have barrier and stuff. We'll get to that eventually, but in the meantime, Life or Death Struggle might be something you want to consider if you don't feel like playing any Resonators. Maybe you're just going for Mikage.
Right, exactly. So 2 stars definitely has some application somewhere.
Yep. Next up is Moonlit Canopy, 3-wheel edition. At the beginning of each player's main phase, that player loses 400 life? This is a black card?
Card screams like a red edition, and then it's just not.
So it's anti-dark tree. You want to just, if they don't have additional removal, they'll just die eventually. But you'll also die eventually too, I guess.
Yeah. The card pretty much does nothing for 3-will. We don't like cards that do nothing, so there's really not much else to say about this thing. 1 star.
Yeah, this card's atrocious. 1 star. I wouldn't play this in draft. I don't know where you play that card.
Nowhere. Next.
Yep. And this is a really fun card. Ray the Black Owl.
And
with the
Zero.
backside of Zero. We finally figured out where Zero was. She was an owl all along. Apparently.
Yep, so going right into Ray, since we have 2 sides to cover. Ray's a 2-will, 5/7 beast with cannot be attacked. That's already fantastic. And at the beginning of your main phase, invert this card. This is one of the only non-judgment related automatic triggers for invert that we've seen.
Yeah, it's the only automatic trigger that isn't judgment.
Yeah. And then once it does inverts into 0, which is an 800/900 with flying. Human and inverse, of course. And entities you control gain, whenever this card is targeted by a spell or ability, cancel that spell or ability, and it only triggers once per turn.
So it's important to note that that second part is all the entities each gain that effect. So it's basically 1 instance of barrier on all Resonators you control.
And all additions, all regalia if you're playing that, all J-rulers.
Everything.
Yeah. Magic stones.
Yep, magic stones too. So in Wanderer, I think this card is like insane.
Yeah, being untargetable by like Black Moonbeam, by Hook, by...
Yep.
There's just so much application for that. And even in New Frontiers, this card still is very, very powerful just because it is something that you can pretty safely play on turn 2. True Blade of Spirits is gone, so Ray often sticks on the board.
And then as your next main phase starts, you get an 8/9.
Which can also immediately attack because it was on the board before then.
Yeah. There's a lot of good in this card. There's not a lot of bad.
Yeah. The only reason we put it at 3 stars is because you do have to wait for the effect to go off. And again, we're thinking that this is going to be going into a fairly aggressive format. 0 is not the most... It can be aggressive, the stats are pretty decent, but at the same time, this is a card that's just screaming, like, mid-range into control.
It's another Death and Taxes-esque card, but again, I'm not too sure how effective that's going to be. 0 is a fantastic card and may be one of the best cards in the set, but we're taking a guess that this is more of an aggressive format. Yep,
so currently we have her as a 3-star, but absolutely be on the lookout for her. There's so much that could happen here.
Yep, and if we get towards more control-y format, this card's going to be fantastic.
Yep, so moving on from there, we have Race Gale.
And that's a 1 black quick cast. Target Resonator gains 0, -5 until end of turn. There's one thing that this card screams for me is that black finally has a way to deal with the turn 1 Cthulhu and Wanderer.
Yep. Turn 1 Cthulhu and Wanderer, turn 1 Sacred Elf, turn 1 Elvish Priest. Just black finally has their identity back with True Blades being banned.
Yeah. It's not the best card in the world. It is only a 1-for-1, and it's only ever going to be a 1-for-1. So it's not ridiculous like True Blade.
Or Space-Time Anomaly, I guess, is another way to compare it, sort of.
Yeah, but a one-well version of like half Space-Time Anomaly. It's like a quarter of Space-Time Anomaly, which is just an ode to how great Space-Time was.
Yep. Something important is that this can be used in Valentina 3.0 to give things -6 defense along with it, so it can potentially scale up if you're playing that build.
Yeah, that kills 2 drops. That's pretty good.
Yeah, but again, the applications are fairly limited for this compared to other cards. We've seen cards with similar effects get banned in the past because they have so much value pushed into them. And Gale, while being a very, very good card for dealing with early aggression with black, it kind of fits in, but we're not sure where it fits right now. So
right now we're thinking it fits perfectly on the power curve.
Yep, exactly. Only other problem with it is that it doesn't target J resonators.
Which is fine. I don't think we need to go that crazy with this card.
Yep.
It's very simple, and it accomplishes exactly what it should accomplish.
Yep, exactly. So 2 stars. Just right where it needs to be, but probably not powerful enough to see widespread usage at the moment.
Right. And next up is Rhea, 4th daughter of the Mikage. We're not going to go over the full card. We're basically just looking at that second unsealed ability, Eye of Ragnarok.
Yep. So if you flip over Rhea, 4th daughter of the Mikage, it goes to Rhea, 4th daughter of the Mikage. Then we go down to that ability, which is when this card enters the field, look at your opponent's hand and choose a card. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, your opponent cannot play cards that share a name with that card.
What?
One turn prohibition, my favorite.
That ability is just so weak.
It has such weird implications, and I think they were trying to make sure that it didn't get crazy, and then they just overbalanced it to the point where it was useless.
I think they were like, hey, we made Glint. Glint's a really cool card. Why don't we make an ability on Rhea that combos with Glint? And I'm here sitting like, why don't you just put Glint on Rhea?
That too, yeah. Or give her Imperishable.
Yeah. The only vampire J Resonator that does not have Imperishable.
Honestly, if she had Imperishable, though, every time you flip over, you get to look at your opponent's hand and stun something, flip back over, flip her again.
Who cares? Get rid of the Eye of Ragnarok ability and just put Imperishable there.
Yeah, literally. That also works.
She's a fantastic J ruler. She just had Imperishable. That's her biggest weakness right now, is that all you do is get 3 mystery counters and maybe kill something.
Yep.
Not a lot that goes on.
Also, yeah. I just realized again, looking at this artwork, her sleeves turn into her wings.
Interesting.
It's strange, but anyway, that's a pretty for a cluster named after Rhea. That's a very unfortunate sealed ability to have unsealed at the very end of it all.
Yeah, and also something as epic as being called the Eye of Ragnarok.
Yep, the Eye of Ragnarok lets me see that. You can't use it for now.
Maybe next turn.
Maybe next time, buddy.
Yeah, and also because Rhea is in black, black is very much into trying to limit your opponent's hand size. There's going to be times where you're going to Judgment Rhea, and that ability is going to get little to no value.
Yep, you look at your opponent's hand, they're like, oh yeah, I have 1 card left in my hand. It's a
it's the dead card that's been sitting in my hand all game because you discarded everything else.
Yep.
Oh well.
It's Charlotte's Water Transformation magic.
Well, can't use it.
Good
anyway,
job.
We're gonna say 2 stars. It's not what Rhea needed, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it could have just been literally nothing, and then that's a 1 star.
Eye of Ragnarok, when this card enters the field, and it just has the arrow.
Ability not found, 404 error.
Pretty much. So, 2 stars for that ability. Who knows where Rhea is going to stay in the meta right now. Who knows how she's going to be when the meta shifts. I think we might see a little more of her when that happens, but for now, 2 stars.
She is strong. This did not help her.
Nope. Moving on.
Yep, Nexus Requiem of the Soul.
I don't understand why this card was printed.
Neither do I, but it exists.
Yep, 1 mana chant. Put target Resonator from graveyard into your hand. We have a multimodal spell from Advent of the Demon King that does this. We have 2 spells from the Time Spinning Witch that do this with upsides, including one for Rhea.
Yep.
We have a Darkness Crest that does this and provides an addition, and that helps Welser out if you're doing that. There is no scenario where this card is better than any of the other ones.
Yep, if you were trying to play around Ferris Spell and you didn't want to play Spider's Web, you have a card called Arrival of the Clan, which has an awakening that lets you that basically makes it a +1. This card is never good.
Yep, 1 star.
1 star.
We put as much time rating it into as much time as the Forceable team put into making it. Next.
The most important thing you get out of this card is that Rhea knows how to play the flute.
Perfect. Yes. Good. We're already past that. Doesn't matter. Sleeping Vampire. Yeah.
1 will 3/4 Vampire. I'd hope so if it's a Sleeping Vampire. At the beginning of your main phase, this card gains +2 and flying. Cool.
Yeah. I don't think this card's terribly awful. I don't think it's like the worst thing in the world. It's an okay statted 1-drop that can get pretty decent if it stays on the board. Only problem is that it has to stay on the board.
Yeah. Which isn't impossible. And
especially with Drew
it's just
gone.
That, like, what's the payoff of having a 5/4 with flying?
Ooh, you get an extra 500 damage in. Ooh. Why aren't you just playing bats?
Yeah, I was about to say, like, if you really were that keen on having a 5/4 flyer for 1 will, why not just play Rhea with her bats? Yep. Bats from the Dark Castle starts the game as a 1 will 6/4 with flying. You don't even have to wait for it.
Yep, exactly. So, Sleeping Vampire just doesn't make the cut. Its stats are fine, does what it has to do. It's aggressively made. It's got like a tempo aggressive made Darkness Resonator, but those don't often see that much good play unless you're trying to build a deck around them. And I don't see that happening with this guy. So 1 star.
1 star. Worst part about this card is you don't even get to your opponent's turn, so it can't even block as a 5/4.
Yep, exactly.
Anyway, next is the night before the decisive battle. 1 will, search your deck for a mystery, reveal and put into your hand, then shuffle your deck. I originally had this as a 2-star. Mike brought me down to a 1 star.
Yep. Again, we were talking about how the fact that mystery counters are going to be relevant right now because it can be searched with this card specifically. The only problem with this card is that, like a lot of other cards that do the same kind of search your deck for X and reveal and put into your hand, the extra cost you're putting into searching out the card kind of defeats the purpose of playing the mystery counters, the mystery spells. You want to use them as they are in your hand and find out what you're doing with the best strategy at the time. The Night Before Decisive Battle is kind of like a proactive way to hold on to your reactive cards, and I just did not see it working in any either control or aggressive Rhea decks, because I think that's what we might be seeing.
Yeah, Rhea points more towards mid-rangey, unfortunately, so a card like this never really gets full value. If she could do a full control package, she doesn't really have the cards for it. This card would probably get a bit better because there are a couple of good mysteries that have combo potential.
Yep, you're basically just playing a 1-mana premium to play against your opponent's next turn and predict what they're doing. So if you want to pull to control Rhea, this card does decent work in that regard, but it's just not an archetype that we see becoming very powerful.
Even if you did wind up doing it, it'd probably be one of the worst cards in the deck, so 1 star.
Yep. Only good thing about this card is that we know that Rhea and Gil got it on.
Spoiler alert.
Next up, we have the Resistor of Destiny.
It's a 3-will 7/7 Dark Elf. It's the only Dark Elf in the set.
Yep.
When this card is put into a graveyard from the field, target GR Resonator gains -3/-3 until end of turn. Really low impact.
This is beyond low impact. This is like, if you use it to block like 1,000, it dies, you deal the last -3/-3 to it, I guess it's okay. But for the fact that you're sinking 3 cost into it, and the fact that around turn 3 to 4, 300 damage or 300 subtraction of any amount of stats is pretty much irrelevant.
Yep, it might save you from 300 damage. But again, if this card rarely 1-for-1s. At 3-wheel, they're playing 8/8s anyway, because that's the power curve. In which case, you only can 1-for-1, hopefully 1-for-1. If it winds up having like barrier or something, it can't. So 1 star.
Yep, not very good. The artwork, though, I think is done by. I think it's by the same artist who did Valentina's artwork.
Maybe those thighs look familiar.
Yep. Always check the thigh. Next.
Next up is a fantastic card, Time Reversal.
Oh man, I love Time Reversal.
Hey, it's about time we got this card. Anyway, it's a
time.
Stop. 1 black chant. Draw a card, put a mystery counter on your J ruler. People have been waiting for that for a really long time. And it actually got a awakening that's really good. Remove 3 mystery counters from your J ruler at the next end of turn. Recover all entities you control.
That is stones, ruler, additions, resonators, regalia.
Wow.
Everything.
You gotta basically just restart your turn.
Yeah,
next turn.
Lumia the board.
And that's fantastic because it untaps stones, all of them. So later in the game this goes, that awakening becomes even less will.
Something really important to think about with this card is that if you hold the mana open, if you had like 4 mana on your turn 5, you Judgment Rhea, and you tap to put a mystery counter on her in response. She comes into play rested with an extra mystery counter and then gains the 3. You Time Reversal, you pay the 3, gain the 1, so you're still sitting at a pretty decent net. And at the end of the turn, you untap the whole thing, and you can still tap to remove mystery counter and kill something.
That is pretty good. That's probably the easiest way to get an activation out of this card. It also plays around Severed Wind, so you might just see that play be what makes Time Reversal the best that it is. Also, Time Reversal is just a fantastic turn 1 play for Rhea.
Yep, just drawing a card. I think this, just from what I'm seeing here with like us talking about it and even coming up with more strategies as we go along, this is unscripted strategy right now.
Yep.
Just with all the potential, this card is absolutely a 4 in any kind of Rhea deck.
Yeah, I'm so glad they finally made this card. Basically, food supply for Rhea.
Food supply plus mass board overhaul.
Yeah, that's just the bonus that brings this card like even better. But Rhea was the one that was like desperately needing it because Rhea has the hardest time getting her mystery counters back. Yeah, Kirik doesn't really need food supply because he doesn't really need to just turbo out those counters and get the draw. Rhea needs it. Yeah, and you know, especially now that she has Glint, which can use mystery counters to double activate. Any type of mystery counter generation is fantastic. So Time Reversal is 4-star, almost pushing on 5 stars. Yeah, it's very high 4-star. So that's that. Last black card here. Vice Leader of the Chivalrous Thieves, Blazer. And it's pretty simple. He's a 3-will, 700, 800, human resonator, and at the beginning of your main phase, you draw a card. It's basically Kronos from Vingolf 3, but doesn't have 0 attack. Yep. Just a better statted version of Kronos, and obviously Kronos didn't see any play. He was a 4-drop with 0 attack that did this, and that was just atrocious. Blazer can definitely stick around for a couple of turns, maybe even at least one turn or not. At his worst, he's a 7-8 for 3, which is below average, but not the worst thing in the world. Exactly. I don't see this card seeing that much play in Constructed at all, but it's, again, not terrible. It's one of those just really good draft cards that you just pick almost always. Yep. I also like the horribly disgruntled face he has while he's giving away all these riches he stole. Yeah, well, he's dumping cash off a roof. What a guy. That's what happens when you're Vice Leader, I guess. Alright, so that brings the end of black cards. We had a pretty decent spread of it. It's about what you should expect.
Yep, the general high amount of lower tier stuff, but then a couple of big gems. The big one-drop spells for Rhea really pushed Black up higher than we normally thought it would be. So that was really cool to see.
Yep. Black is in a really good spot after this. It was already in a really good spot, just in general, but this definitely helps.
Yep, general good cards, general good strategies, and I hope to be seeing a lot of Rhea come the future, as long as people don't keep playing Sherry and putting Powerless Dragonoid in there.
Well, it's time to move on to the dual color and variant cards and stones.
Yep, pretty much anything that isn't just, monocolor stuff.
Yep. And first off is my pick for my favorite card of the set.
Yep.
A heroic epic 4000.
Yeah, 1000th Night. It's this is the card that Joe and I are saying is the sleeper. It's 3 will, 1 fire, 1 darkness, and 1 of any color chant, which lets you put a resonator from your hand into the field, and at the next end of turn, you return that card to the hand.
So if you take this as just, cheat something in and then it goes back to your hand, it's pretty bad. But you have to treat this as kind of like a spinning mitts. And there's going to be whatever type of thing you do to that card that you spinning mitts on the board. It's a spinning mitts for any card, no matter what. If you really want to be cheesy, you use Yamada no Orochi.
Yep,
that's
one 8-drop with it.
No, not even. I'm talking about the 8-drop one that we got from Echoes of the New World.
Oh, the one that deals 800 to the board?
Yeah, you deal 16 to the board on turn 3.
Okay.
After swinging twice. You also deal 800 to your opponent. If you're playing Lumia, you flicker it. You don't have to worry about the end of turn trigger. You now have this infinite Borg wipe on the board that's pretty hard to remove. And that's very good for what this card is.
Yep. Another pretty important thing about it is that at the next end of turn trigger effect is... I guess it's not as important because I remember what Laura's text is.
Yep. Laura can only cancel opponent's abilities. Otherwise, you could cancel Door of Time, and that'd be stupid.
Yep. Just hope that your opponent tries to cancel it because you trick her something, and they're just like, oh, I need to Laura something.
Alright, so I will spoil something. If you use Heroic Epic with Umer, you can do some really stupid shit.
Yep, that's been a pretty decent amount of experimentation that we've had lately. The card itself, if you get it off unhindered, it's an insane amount of damage.
If you want to go that option, or it's just you that gets dumped out of your deck turn 3, Umer is basically draw and play 3 cards, and then whatever abilities those cards have trigger, and you get all those pluses. You could basically draw and play 5 cards and not get Severing Winds off of it. This card is insane, and whenever they print a big card, you're always gonna have to wonder what happens if I cheat out on turn 3 because Heroic Epic exists.
Yep, it's a card that really is something that'll make you think about design space, and is just, again, a sleeper. 5 stars.
5 stars. The one thing I'm really curious about, the flavor text on this card mentions a card called Scheherazade, the Weaver of Tales, that does not exist in this set.
Yep, we've had a couple of those in the past. We had a Mercurius and Soul mentioned on Lorite's spells in the last set.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Very strange. So
I wonder if it's a card that just got cut, but who knows.
Yep.
Next up, another 5-star card.
Boop. It's Ataraxia, City of Verdant Green. Green-red edition. You tap it to produce fire or wind, and if you spend this will to play a Resonator, it gains swiftness as it enters the field until end of turn.
Alright, so I'm going to tell immediate reason why it has 5 stars. It has Valentina and Shion on it, so you don't even have to go any further. It doesn't matter what text is on the card. We're done here.
Yep, it's got both of them together, and it's got Machina, and it's got Lancelot, and it's got... Is that all up there? Yeah, it's all up there.
Yep. Arla, Varia, Melgus, Rizard is not on this. That's the only 7 king you don't see.
And Persia, but that doesn't count. Whatever.
Prissy's banned, so she can't show up here anyway.
Right, yeah, exactly. This is a red-green card. No, Priscilla, you can't come here.
So let's actually talk about the card. This card is absolutely insane. There's no other better way to say it. This card can give things swiftness that should not have swiftness, and that's like problem zone with Priscilla.
Yep. It's not only is it swiftness to things that shouldn't get swiftness, it's also ramp for things that shouldn't be ramped in.
Yep, and also because this card is an addition, and additions don't have summoning sickness. Basically, this is a mana dork with swiftness too.
Yep.
That gives other things swiftness.
So it's essentially just a one. It's basically just a 1 mana card.
Yep. What the fuck, Force Will?
Yep. It's kind of insane.
You know, I made a whole entire aggro deck around trying to give Lumia swiftness. Now you give us this. I don't even have to make an aggro deck anymore. This just naturally goes into the deck and pairs super well with Rachel. Pairs really well into Lumia command style. Pairs really well into Lumia anything almost. Just because Lumia likes things that can tap themselves.
Yep.
So
hey, you know what? Good news. If this card's good enough to be banned in a future balance change, we can still keep it at least for the art.
Exactly.
That's forward thinking.
There is counterplay with this card. You could, you know, play things like Lightning Cave.
You could even lore out the ability.
You cannot lore at the
ability. Oh right,
it's
it's a mana
effect.
Ooh.
Yep. There is addition hate in the game. The addition hate's kind of decent.
Yep.
Cleansing doll. Sorry, cleaning doll. That's basically it. This is like top tier card.
Yep. Absolute 5-star material. 100%.
Try and pull 4 of these if you get a box. Good luck.
That's all we gotta say. Godspeed.
Next up is Beyond the Threshold of Time.
Yep, Beyond is a 3-will, 1 wind, 1 water, 1 colorless chant. You draw a card and you put the top card of your Magic Stone deck into the field, not rested.
It's a really cool card. I wish it wasn't coming into such a format where we were seeing Ataraxia and other things that are going to go really fast, because playing this on turn 3 just feels kind of bad right now.
Yeah, exactly. You don't really want to... Technically it's a 2-will card because it gives you a Magic Stone, but even a 2-will card that draws a card isn't really worth it.
Yeah, it's basically a 3-will version of Gretel, I want to say, because if you draw a 2/2,
Yeah,
that's kind of a stretch, but it's more expensive than your typical RAM card. But it is really good if you wind up pushing towards more of control meta, especially one where blue-green is better color. Hopefully blue is better color at some point. This card could wind up seeing play because ramp is efficient. That's about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an efficient card. It's a card that has a lot of intrinsic value to it, but probably just will be too slow to see play currently. So just a 2-star rating for now. Keep an eye on it.
2 stars. Next up is a card I like, Inherit of the Stars Gil Lapis.
Yeah, I'll let you talk about this boy.
Alright, it's a 4-will, 1,000/1,000 flying barrier, vampire human guardian. That's a lot of Resonator tags. This card cannot be cancelled if your J ruler is Gil or Gil the Gifted Conjurer. We'll go over that specifically. At the beginning of your main phase, put a mystery counter on your J ruler. We'll go over why that's important. Remove an elemental in your graveyard from the game. Produce some will and put a +1/+1 counter on this card. Play its ability only once per turn. So first place to start is the cancel if you're playing Gil. I don't think this card sees playing Gil. It just is too much at odds with what Gil wants to do. Gil wants to banish out his elementals himself, so he produces double green for 1 green or double green for his spirit chance. Gil Lapis is kind of at odds with that. That's gonna just produce whatever will you want, but it's only 1, and it can go through anything, but it's basically just as good as Gil. You want to add?
Yeah, I guess the main thing is that basically if you're gonna try to play this in Gil, you're gonna just try and play around 7 wins most of the time. And if you do, you're basically just trying to make a late game push to just kind of put a 1,000 flying barrier on board. The 3 tags are fairly interesting. Having Vampire and Human and Guardian is interesting. There are some applications for that, probably more relevant in Wanderer, but still decent. And the whole package coming together is really cool, actually. It's a good way to bridge between mechanics that have been shown throughout the entire cluster.
Right.
And the last important thing is that now we know for a fact that Gil and Rhea got it on.
Yes, this is their child. Because it's a vampire human. Anyway, it also has the ability to put mystery counters on your J-Ruler, which is, I'd say, like above average as an ability, because mystery counters are pretty important. It's kind of a slow mystery counter, but you'll get it eventually. And then the removing elementals is pretty important because that's a will ability. So if you need the +1/+1, you can't cancel that because it's a will ability. It's not going to use the chase.
Yep, exactly.
So that's all the good with this card. The bad is it comes down a bit late. It competes pretty heavily with Charlotte, the 4-drop that we got in LEL.
Yep, Legacy Lost.
Yeah, because that has barrier times the number of cards in your hand. You're expecting to have around 5 cards, and that basically makes it a 12/12.
Yep.
Sorry, 10/10.
But at the same time, Gil Lapis technically can gain some value as you go along. Even if you're not just trying to produce the colors, having a way to just kind of toss +1/+1 counters on him during each player's turn is fairly relevant.
Yep. Overall, he's a very good, like, mid to late game ender.
Yeah, he's pretty much a closer for those decks, just with all those abilities put together.
In my opinion, he's best put in Rhea.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. But if you are playing just a general green-black deck that plays some elementals, no reason you shouldn't put him in there too.
Yeah. 3 stars overall. I wanted to push for a 4-star, but he's a little bit niche, and the elementals are not that strong.
Yep, exactly. So 3 stars for now, but could potentially see some play if people find a better shelf to put him in.
Next up is Invitation to Valhalla. It's a blue-black chant. Search your hand, deck, and/or graveyard for up to 4 cards, and remove them from the game. If you search your deck, shuffle it.
This card's so weird.
It's very interesting, though. There are cards that like to be removed from the game, but it's in such an odd color.
Yeah, exactly, because the immediate cards I think of are like Yigdor and Veil Savarian Apparition, which are red and green. I don't know anything that's going to want to splash blue and black in there to try and get that to work.
I mean, Tree was already going to play like blue-black because they like Space-Time Anomaly. So Dark Tree doesn't really mind it because they can dump their 7 kings and stuff like that to get their engine started a little bit faster.
Very true.
That's probably the best application of this card, unless you're going to use it to like dump 4 Vel Savarian Apparitions to get a 12/12 for 2.
You mean 16/16?
Oh yeah, it's because 4 times 4. You're right. 2 Will 16/16. That, you know, dies to any AoE.
Yep, and is only available in Wonder.
But it's an interesting card. I'd keep it in the back of your head if we get cards that benefit from being removed from the game. I know what this card can go into, which is another Wanderer deck. It's Lumia 1.
Yeah, that one's pretty decent.
Yeah, because
from the removed area.
Yep.
Still think just playing with Remnant cards is a little better, but at the same time, no reasons can't see playing there. Again, those are really, really niche options though, and it's pretty expensive to just make yourself a turn to try and set up for the control.
And this card is absolutely terrible in New Frontiers.
Yeah, there's absolutely no synergy in New Frontiers.
So we're going to say 1 star for now. Keep it on the radar for Wanderer. We didn't do much testing for that. but
Yep. And
we had some.
assuming that this is a card that is meant to kind of synergize with the Valhalla cluster just because of the name implying it, could potentially see cards that synergize with it in the future.
Alright, so that's that. 1 star for Invitation.
Yep.
Next up is Journey to the Future. It's a 2-will white black. Draw 2 cards, and if your J ruler is Rhea, you gain 100 life for each card in your hand. Another really strange card.
Yeah, it's a very odd one because I don't see how the light interacts here because it's Gil and Rhea.
Yeah, but they already had the green-black one, so...
Yeah, but aside from that, Journey to the Future is a very strange card. Doesn't really make much sense in the color that it is. It's kind of the opposite of Blood Spray too, where it's a draw 2, but then you gain life instead of losing life, but it doesn't have the awakening on it. This could potentially be interesting in like a really, really slow control deck that wants to dig for answers, but you're only going to be playing this card if you're playing Rhea, and Rhea is not going to play something this slow. Nor is she.
And again, they have Blood Spray. Rhea is really gets a lot of value out of Blood Spray, and it completely trumps Journey. They're going to be putting it at 1 star.
I even think that Time Reversal just sees a better niche spot in even a control deck than this.
I mean, you're going to play Time Reversal anyway if it's Rhea, so I don't think that's a fair comparison. It's just not worth playing. If you want to draw 2 for 2, it's Blood Spray.
Yep, exactly. So 1 star.
1 star. Reincarnation of the Soul, 2-will, green-white, Spirit Magic. Quick cast, shuffle up to 3 target non-magic stone cards from a single removed area into their owner's deck. Draw a card. So, Dark Tree?
It looks like it's made for like either Dark Tree or obviously know it's made for Gil because it's not like Spirit Magic, but it lets you recycle the Spirit Magics you've been clearing out to do effects.
Yeah.
But the fact that it splashes in white's really weird. You can't make this a free cost on your flip side, so that's an unfortunate part of it.
I think it would have been a little bit... It's really weird because why would you want to shuffle up to 3 things from your removed area? I mean, I guess your opponent's removed area, but like, why? Because if there's stuff in your removed area, that's going to be like, what, Remnant Chance? That's maybe the best application?
Either Remnant Chance or there are cards that, well, you can remove, I'm thinking purely in terms of Gil right now. Remove the Spirit Magics you've been using to bring back a Lorite, and then do Reincarnation, the 3 things you put back to gain back the Lorite and draw the card.
That's not good.
Yep, it's really slow.
So 1 star.
Yep, we don't see an application of this card currently. You still could potentially use it, again, as we mentioned before, which is fine. It's not like great, but it's an option.
It's infinite cycling for Tree, though, which means that he can continuously draw into things. It's not like Millennia Medicine or whatever.
Yeah, and the fact that this quick cast is really nice, so we could see some tree loops with this.
Yeah. Next up is Restoration. Or are we? Oh yeah, we already said 1 star. So Restoration, 2-will, fire white. Search your deck for a Resonator or Addition, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. If its total is 2 cost or less, and your J ruler is Tigris, you may play it without paying its cost instead of putting it into your hand. So it's a weird niche Moonbeam Butterfly for Tigris in red-white.
And only for things that cost 2 or less.
Yeah, and I mean, you could still search things, which is utility, but still, you'd rather just play things.
Yep, exactly. So, with all the conditions on this card, we definitely see it being less frequently used and occasionally being searchable in like a really aggressive, either not really like aggressive, like maybe like a tempo-oriented Pythagoras deck. But the fact that it is to will search something that's cheap and then just play it is really important, especially with all the good 2-drops we have in the game, like I don't know, what, Sylvie, oh, Madbore, Piggy, I guess we could add in there.
Yeah, but if you're gonna do that, why not just play Keurig? That's the big problem with this deck. It doesn't cheat.
Yeah, and it also doesn't just like putting red into Panda just makes it a worse Keurig.
Yeah. I think this card would have made Panda if it's at 3 cost or less.
Yeah, absolutely, because then you'd be able to search out like a Gemblade Ruby and then gain the swiftness if you have a red gem. There's just a lot of decent mid-range pandas that can be used with Restoration, and the colors that it's in are bad, the cost that it searches are bad. It's very, very niche, but the effect is very powerful when pulled off in the correct sequence that you need. So
yeah,
we couldn't give this thing a 1 star, but 2 stars probably is a fair assumption for it.
If we somehow get more pandas in Valhalla, Restoration gets better. Maybe.
Maybe.
But that's enough about Restoration. 2-star card.
Yep. Moving on, we have one of my favorites from the set, the Kingdom of Diversity Light Palace.
It's a blue-white edition. Resonators you control gain +1/+1 for each different race among all Resonators you control. Resonators you control gain Flying, Swiftness, First Strike, Precision, Barrier, and or Drain, as long as you control a J-Ruler with that ability. This is such a smart card.
This is one of the coolest card designs I've ever seen, and it's in such undervalued colors.
It's in the best color that it could be for that, because it is a very powerful effect. The colors is what's holding it back. It's in the same colors as Dawn of the Earth.
Yep, exactly.
And, you know, everyone knows Dawn of the Earth is a fantastic card. It's just blue-white, which is kind of the worst colors.
Yep. So immediately, the immediate implications with this, just stack a bunch of keywords onto a J-Ruler and go at it. Cards like Imul, Scarlet, who else has Drain? No other J-Rulers have Drain, I don't think.
Lumi has Technical Drain, but unfortunately that doesn't count for the keyword.
Right.
Yeah. Sad.
Yeah. Just anything that has any built-in abilities like this is going to be really, really powerful.
In Wanderer also, you have to consider that you can give your J-Rule abilities pretty easily with Regalia.
Yep, so having like an Apollo to give your board flying, not Levitine because that's gone, precision with, say, like a Artemis the Godsbow. Artemis the Godsbow, yep.
You can get those small little side keywords that bring up the overall power. The interesting one that's talking about that's definitely never going to see play is if you get Schrodinger up with like 10 cards removed on your opponent, you get a Swiftness, First Strike, and Precision, which is really cute, but never going to happen.
Right, exactly, because you need 10 cards removed for that.
And also you need to be playing black, blue, white, dark Alice,
That's just
which
weird.
could be a fun deck.
Weird though. The other thing that's really important is that Resonators that have multiple races, kind of like the one we saw with Gil Lapis, those do count for that +1/+1. So that Gil Lapis would give your board an extra +3/+3 on its own.
Which is very sick. It gives a lot of thought into Resonator types, which we haven't really seen a lot of recently. Basically, the only Resonator type you look at is if it's a dragon or not at the moment in New Frontiers. Yep. But now if it has like 2 different races, it's now becomes something like, ooh, that's really strong with Kingdom of Diversity Light Palace. Maybe I should figure out a way to make the 2 meet.
Yeah, exactly. So with that all being said, this card is extremely high value and obviously fits in very niche style decks, but at the same time it kind of defines those decks. So as a defining card for that, we have to definitely give it a 3-star rating.
You might be able to push this up higher. We just don't. The color is a really heavy restriction on this card, though. So
yep, absolutely. So 3 stars for now.
Yeah. Next up is the Path We Part.
This is the last dual color card we have, and it is a big one.
Yep. It's a 2-cost quick cast if your J-Ruler is Keurig, Raric. You may pay water less to play this card, so it becomes 1 red. If your J ruler is Shayla, you pay fire less to play it, so it becomes 1 blue. Choose one. This card deals 600 damage to target J resonator or return target resonator to its owner's hand. This is one of the bigger reasons why I couldn't devote more stars to Firebird.
Because this card is just such insane value on its own.
Yep. It fits into 2 decks that really would benefit from either of these effects in the early game. The only bad side for Keurig is that it isn't a battle art, but I'm sure he'll get around it because this card's fantastic.
Yep. And also, this is a really good tool for Shayla. I'm coming on the other side of the coin here, because Shayla really doesn't have any good early game tempo cards that let you kind of take advantage of the board immediately and clear things for a good path to the face.
Yep.
So
overall, this is a really good card. Return target resonator for 1. That is a very hard effect to find. So both these decks are going to benefit from that extremely well, because that can bounce almost anything, including big drops, late game cards.
Exactly.
And 600 damage.
It just gives such an extra value to like Keurig trying to go face, because normally like a big control resonator might shut you down. If you just pop back to the hand for 1 red, it's solid.
Yep. This is a really fun design of a card. You don't see many cards like this that try and push you towards 2 different rulers and make this card like really good in both those decks and give identity to each other from each deck. It's cool design, very smart.
Yep. So 4 stars.
4 stars. We couldn't do 5 stars because we don't think this card is game breaking.
Yep, absolutely not.
Next up is the stones. There are only 2 of them.
Yep. First one is Ethereal Wind Magic Stone. Pretty simple special magic stone. Tap to produce green, and then you can banish it to put an aura from your removed area into your hand.
This immediately reminds us of Spirit Magic Stone, which can be banished to draw a card. But that one also counts as a Wind Magic Stone.
This one does not.
Yeah. There are pros and cons to both of these. Ethereal Wind Magic Stone is insane if you can get to draw one of the really good auras. Cough, cough, Resuscitating Will. But if you're playing Resuscitating Will, it does not combo well with the stone because it is a pure green stone.
Yep, that's the only issue we have with it. Because of the kind of like that anti-synergy with the really good auras, we unfortunately could only go up to a 2-star for this card.
We don't really see much play, but if we wind up going into a format where special magic stones are pretty rare, we could wind up seeing this card a bit more often.
Yep, exactly. So 2 stars for now.
Exactly. Next up is Magic Stone of Time. Another special magic stone. This is a water one, and the other option, it can produce time. So I think we talked about this card a bit with Distortion of Time.
Yeah, exactly. So you can basically splash this into any deck that's playing water and have the ability to use your Distortion of Time. But also it's the only way to judgment your Time-Spinning Wish. So this card is kind of a necessary evil in that deck, but the fact that it can't produce either is really good. So we say 2 stars for that. It gives you a really good judgment, but unfortunately just kind of streamlines you into more heavy blue play.
Yep, unfortunately, it's the biggest restriction on Time-Spinning Witch right now.
Yep.
So, 2 stars. It could go up if we wind up going into a non-dual stone set, just because Distortion of Time plus this is going to be pretty relevant for blue as an identity.
Exactly. So.
That's the end of the stones. Both of the stones are 2 stars. Next up is
the
Grimious Fairy.
We'll go through these pretty quickly.
Yeah, so Grimious Fairy, this variant, we lost Drain for +1/+1, still 1 star.
Yep. How dare you whitewash my fairies. Next, variant Dread Touch. They take away the mechanic that makes it an interesting clear option and turns it into Bad Lancelot, 1 star.
Next up is variant Wings of Ragnarok. Same thing, except it doesn't gain +2/+2, and you can use Water Wool to give it flying. It's even worse, 1 star.
Yep. Herbivorous Beast Similosaurus. This one actually gets a little bit better just because it gains +1/+1 for each Wind Magic Stone instead of just the +300, and it starts as 12/12. So on the turn it's played, it's an 1800 instead of a 1500, I guess.
1800, yeah, 1500. So yeah, just 300 more defense.
Yep. So technically better on the turn than it's summoned, but still unbelievably slow. 1 star.
1 star. And last card is Variant Essence of the Void. It now has a null effect that says this card gains +2/+2 in precision. Somehow it got even worse. 1 star.
So that's it. Other cards here, we see a lot of 1 stars just because we had to deal with the variants. Everything else was really good from that. A couple of 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, just a really good spread on a very small number of cards.
Yep. Basically, it was a bunch of interesting cards that were just to kind of tie this whole cluster together, and I think that's really nice of how Force Will did it. Not overbearing in any way, and I definitely like how they did this section.
Yep, exactly. So, with that being said, that is the entire set of Winds of the Ominous Moon. Thank you all for watching.
Yep. Let us know if you like episodic, if you like shorter episodes in terms of just doing 1 color at a time. I think I would have.
Yeah, after these lengths.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mike didn't calculate that having 2 of us talk and give our opinions on each of these cards would draw out the length of the video from his 2-hour-long set reveal of what.
Well, thankfully, you'll have something to listen to on your long road trips now.
Yep. So, Mike, what are we planning next? Where are we going to? We're going to Atlantic City in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, sir, indeed. I still have to get the hotel rooms.
Who cares? Anyway, thank you all for watching. Let us know what you think about our picks. Let us know about your picks.
What are your sleeper cards? Because we already told you ours.
Yep, and let us know if we disrespected you for not liking your card, and we'll try and see your light.
Yep, exactly. Alright, this has been Deepwood Force of Will, and this is Mike.
And Joe.
Signing out. Peace.
Thanks again. Bye.